in UiTM during her sabbatical. So Prof. Nazimah has nearly 30 years of experience in food science, with a scientific track record in leading research projects as well as fostering and inspiring research students to publish in high-quality, internationally recognized journals. She has supervised 11 PhD and 46 master students, and currently there are 11 PhD and 1 master student under her supervision. Very impressive. So Prof. Nazimah has 186 publications with H index of 41 in Scopus, with over 4,831 citations, and H index of 51 in Google Scholar with more than 7,400 citations. She is also actively serving as editor for prestigious journals such as Frontiers in Nutrition, Frontiers in Food Science and Technology, Molecules, Food, Legume Science and Sustainability. And that summarized her 30 years of experience in 3 minutes. Her vast experience makes her the best candidate for our sharing session today, which is exploring innovation diffusion. I believe a good understanding on the innovation diffusion might spark idea on how research can take a further step towards commercialization. So without further ado, I would like to invite Prof. Nazimah to start her sharing session. So Prof, the WebEx floor is yours. Please welcome Prof. Nazimah. Thank you. Prof, you are mute?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, okay.
Okay. So, yeah, bit of a technical problem there. Okay, I'll just start off with my talk today. Thank you, Dr. Aida, for your kind introduction. And it is my pleasure to share with you about the diffusion of innovation. So this topic is of interest because I do carry out research in the consumer side of food science as well. And I think this is an extremely important model that people should be aware of. And when they are developing new products, they should consider using a model like this to assess the adoption of the new products that they plan to, you know, carry out, those commercialize them. You need to know what the consumers perceive, and this is what the talk is all about. Oops. All right. So diffusion of innovations.
Sorry, Prof. Sorry
Yeah,
to interrupt you.
yeah.
Will you share the slide or you need me to share the slide for you?
Oh, yeah. How
I
come?
forgot to ask, sorry.
Hang on.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. I don't know what's happening. How come I'm sharing my desktop? Okay, hang on. I'll stop sharing and go back to my share screen.
all right.
Thank you. Okay. Hopefully I'm sharing the right screen now. Yep, can you see it?
Yeah, all right.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So this talk on diffusion of innovation is actually from a book that was written by Professor Everett Rogers. He was a professor in 1962 who came up with this idea, and he was a communication theorist at the University of New Mexico when he developed this model. So what this theory explains is that how over time an idea or product, yeah, gains momentum and diffuses. When I say diffuses, it means spreading. How does it spread? Through a specific population or a social system. So the keywords here are time, idea, diffusion, and social system. So what is diffusion? So diffusion of an idea involves some sort of social change. All right. So the society has a function to perform in the sense that they will look at the new ideas, okay, and they will decide on either adopting or rejecting that new idea. So in the diffusion of innovation model, there are four main elements. Number one is innovation. Number two is communication channels, because you want to communicate that idea to the masses, okay, to the people. And this will occur over a specified time, over some time, and among the members of a social system. So here you have four elements: innovation, communication channels, time, and a social system. And I will go through these four elements with you in my talk today. This is just showing you how the diffusion process works, and you can see time on the x-axis and percent of adoption on the y-axis. And you can see characteristically what happens with the curves. You can see a sort of S-shaped curve. And you can see earlier adopters. So those are the people that have adopted that idea earlier. And the later adopters, the people who adopt the ideas much, much later. And this will be covered as well in the talk when I talk about the social system. So just a quick reminder, what are the elements of diffusion of innovation? Number one is innovation, the innovation itself. Number two, the communication channels. Number three is time. And number four is the social system. I'm going to go through each of these elements one by one. And you can see here, number one is innovation. So what is innovation? Innovation is any idea, object, or practice that is perceived as new. Okay, I'll talk about what new is. When I say perceived as new, it may not be necessarily new. Okay, so by the different, so that perception is by members within the social system. And this is what I will talk about first, and I will go on to 2, 3, and 4 in my talk. So you can see here that innovation is an idea. Sometimes people look, well, some ideas are not new. They've been there for some time. So this, when I say new here, it's a newness in innovation. It could be an innovation of an existing product. So it will not need to just involve new knowledge. Some innovations may have been there for a while, but people have not developed a favorable or unfavorable attitude towards it, nor have they adapted or rejected it. So I mean by of a, a new idea. So in order to adopt an innovation, I'm going to firstly talk about the different factors that influence adoption of an innovation. So this comes under the innovation umbrella. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these factors that you see here. So what leads to innovation adoption? I'll be explaining to you what relative advantages are, complexity, trialability, observability, and compatibility. In doing so, I will share with you some case studies so that you can understand it better. So there have been quite a few recent studies using the diffusion of innovation model, and I hope you will find you can see the advantages of adopting a model like this. So I'm just going to go through what relative advantages are. So just starting off with the definitions. Okay, so what is a relative advantage? A relative advantage is the degree to which an innovation is perceived as being better than the old idea. Okay, so this is a new idea or a new product. So when you see that new product, has has got advantages, that is a measure of its adoption. Okay, it has to have some relative advantage. Compatibility. All right. Compatibility is the degree to which an innovation is perceived as being consistent with the existing values, past experiences, and needs of your potential adopters. Then there's complexity. Complexity is defined as the degree to which an innovation is perceived as being difficult to understand. All right. So that's why people tend not to adopt that innovation, because it may be perceived as being more difficult, more complicated, and therefore adopted more slowly. Trialability. All right. So often when you develop a product, you must let your customers experiment it. Yeah. It could be through a, a, a trial online, if it's a software, for example, or it could be a food product. Yeah. Triability is an important thing because you're allowing this innovation to be experimented by your customers. And once people try things, then they will um, be able to adopt that idea more quickly, and compared to products that you cannot try. Observability is the degree to which the results of an innovation are visible to others. So you've seen all the five here, of the five different attributes of innovation that influences their adoption by the society. So what I'm going to go to is to share with you some case studies so that these attributes are clearer to you. And so what I did was I looked on Scopus, and I thought this would be something most people would be able to relate to, the Uber mobile app. Yeah, we use it a lot. Here in Malaysia, they use Grab. All right, so there are a lot of these mobile apps that gives you an opportunity to get transportation instead of using taxis. So this is a paper just recently published by Min, So, and Jiang. I'll show you those papers at the end of the talk, but you have the references here and you can go and download them and have a read and see how you could apply this to your idea. You have all these research ideas, so maybe you would want to apply a model like this to test out your idea. And they had this published in the Future of Tourism. It's a paper, a marketing. It's a paper that's published by Routledge. So what is the purpose of the study? I thought, maybe we should just start off with why they carried out this study so you're clear about the objectives. So this study investigated consumer adoption Uber mobile app through lenses of two theoretical models, one of which is the diffusion of innovation theory model, and the second model being the technology acceptance model. So whenever we carry out a research like this, it's always important to have a conceptual framework. And what you see on the left, okay, what you see on the left are the factors that influence adoption of that innovation. Okay, so you see the DIT, or diffusion of innovation theory, on the left hand side, and you can see the five factors that I just talked about just now. In a conceptual framework, you also see perceived usefulness, perceived ease of use, and these can be correlated to your factors that influence adoption in the DIT model. And so when it's perceived usefulness and perceived ease of use, attitude, and whether people would adopt this innovation in future, this involves the technology acceptance model. So basically, you're using two different models in this conceptual framework in order to find out, okay, the future usage intention of your customers for the Uber mobile app. All right. So it's always important to come up with a conceptual framework first before you jump into adopting a model really quick. There's a lot of thoughts, a lot of hypotheses that you need to develop before you get into it. So I'll just talk about the relative advantage and why I'm doing the reason why I'm doing it. So you all use some sort of Uber or Grab app. So you can get a better understanding of relative advantage. So in terms of the Uber mobile app, the relative advantages that are perceived by the consumers um, is always you know related to the comparison to what the consumers previously used. So what did we use before Uber and Grab? We used taxis. All right. So you would compare the Uber mobile app, yeah, or Uber rides compared to the taxi rides. Because by comparing it to the previous methods, you can provide an overall evaluation of the mobile app's relative advantages being assessed. Okay, and this in turn would influence the perceived usefulness and the perceived ease of use. All right, and is in the consumer acceptance model. So remember, there are two models being dealt with in this paper. So these are the sort of questions you could ask. Whenever we're using conceptual models, there are lots of different questions you can use when you're developing your own questionnaire. And this is an example of questions that or statements that are included in the questionnaire in terms of relative advantages. So you would have a statement like, compared to you requesting a regular taxi, Uber mobile app improves the quality of my task for requesting transportation. And this you would be accompanied by a scale which has completely disagree at one end and completely agree at one end. All right, so you'll get your respondents to rate that scale for this statement in order to understand how much they agree in terms of this particular statement. So under relative advantages, you can see they've got about 6 different statements here. So RA2, compared to requesting a regular taxi, the Uber mobile app gives me a greater control over my task for requesting transportation. So you're having all these statements and getting your respondents to show whether they agree or disagree to these statements. And so there are a lot of statements that you can see here. And all of these are related to advantages. So the third one is related to the convenience in terms of access to transportation, to make payment in a more convenient way, because you get to use your card, and you don't need to have your cash with you. They here they had a statement on application saves me money regular taxi, and you can see they've deleted it because when they carried this out with in a preliminary study, the respondents didn't find this particular statement as being useful. All right, so before you go out and jump into administering your questionnaires, always remember you got to do a preliminary test to see whether those statements hold true and your participants understand it. Okay, another relative advantage is the enhancements of someone's overall transportation experience. So this is what I mean by relative advantages. The second component that influences adoption is compatibility. And I've just mentioned it just now, is the degree to which a service is perceived as being consistent to your values, beliefs, habits, and present and previous experiences. And this is according to Rogers 1995, that book chapter that I showed you earlier. So what would the statements be? So Uber mobile app fits well with the way I like to request transportation. Uber mobile app is compatible with my lifestyle. So that's a measure of compatibility. You can see with relative advantages, they had about 6 statements. It doesn't mean you have to have 6 statements for compatibility. You can find that these are the 2 most important ones that are suitable for the Uber app. But you might find that with other ideas or innovations, you may have more um, statements in terms of compatibility for the respondents to rate. So the third component is complexity. All right, so this is important because you need to assess complexity. If the idea or innovation is too complex, the chances of it being adopted is relatively low. And so you need to ask your customers, how complex they find this particular idea is. All right, so the Uber mobile app may be perceived to require complex procedures because it requires input of users' personal and location information. So you might find this a bit of a hassle, yeah, having to key in all this. But remember, you just have to key it in once, and then it's there for you to use. So people who are older, who are not so keen on tech, who find problems using a smartphone, yeah, so they might find procedures like this complex compared to most of you here today. So method of payment, phone number, email addresses, pickup location. So you got to have all this inputted when you're using an Uber mobile app. So this could result in some people being put off using an app like this, and so they would rather call a taxi. But mind you, taxis today also use apps. So an example, some example of questions you can ask in terms of complexity could be Uber mobile apps requires technical skills. All right, so you can see whether people agree or disagree to this statement. Uber mobile app requires a lot of mental effort. Uber mobile app can be frustrating. So this will be administered to your respondents, and they will tell you whether they agree or not to these statements. So good news if your app is not, if people disagree to the statements, because that will mean that your product or idea will be more easily adopted. So another thing here is uh, it also is looking at the observability, okay, what you can see. All right, so what can you see on a Uber mobile app? It provides you information about the requested services. So it gives you an estimated time of arrival, which is good. Then you can tell your friend, I'm going to arrive by this time. It gives you an idea of the cost of the trip. The cost of a trip will depend on whether you're doing that trip during a rush hour, and that could be a bit more expensive. The plate number, type of car, color, driver information, transaction history. In addition, your travel history as well, your frequent destinations, and you have access to that. So observability is pretty important. And these are the sort of statements to assess observability of an idea or an innovation. All right, so for example, I can see the benefits of using Uber mobile apps immediately. I've seen what others can do using their Uber mobile app. Okay, so those are the factors that I mentioned, but in this study, they also included social influence. Okay, so I mentioned 5 just now, but in recent years, okay, so that 5 was the 5 that was identified by Rogers. Okay, so he came up with this model in 1962 and it's been used ever since. But there are more recent studies, like from the 1990s and 2009, and they found that social influence is also an important factor that influence adoption of an innovation. So people will adopt an innovation in a conformity motive, meaning that you are influenced by people around you. All right, and that's why social influence is an important factor that was studied in this recent paper. So you may have statements like, I've seen others using Uber mobile apps. In my social group, I see Uber mobile apps on many people's smartphones. So, you see your friends using the app and you would be a bit more keen in taking up that idea. It's easy for me to observe others using Uber mobile app in my social group. So this is just giving you an idea of what consumers feel, uh, you know, when they see this app being used by friends, families, people they work with, and so on. So that's what I mean by social influence. So I shared with you the conceptual framework, right? And so whenever we carry out studies like this, it's very important to investigate the correlation. And so what you see here are the 5, okay? They're not the 5 that Rogers had. Um, Rogers had relative advantage, compatibility, complexity, and observability. But remember, they've added social influence in the mix as well. And so what you can do is what we call a partial least squares path modeling method of analysis. And I use this a lot in my study with consumers, because from the statements, from the results that you get, you're able to see if they are significantly or not significantly correlated to the other components in your framework. So what you see here is a framework, and on the left is the diffusion of innovation model. Perceived usefulness, perceived ease of use, attitude, and future usage intentions are coming from your consumer acceptance model. All right, so they've used 2 models. And what you can do is you can go down there and you can see p-values. So this is telling you whether there are statistically significant correlations. So all these studies usually carry out some sort of partial least squares regression to look at correlations. And you can see for most of it, what do you see? They're all significant. But you see numbers there. Okay, so if you see a negative number, for example, complexity, it's a negative value. All right, so complex, if it's more complex, yeah, perceived usefulness would decrease. All right. And so it's only for complexity that you see these negative correlation values uh, in terms of perceived usefulness and perceived ease of use. Otherwise, you will get positive correlation between relative advantage, compatibility, observability, social influence, and they are all significantly correlated, positively significantly correlated to perceived usefulness and perceived ease of use. So if you get people agreeing to those advantages, you can see it's good. Okay, you've identified the right factors, and your product would be perceived as being more used. successful, more easy to use, more easy to use. And this will in turn influence your perceived usefulness and perceived ease of use in the consumer acceptance model. It will influence attitude that will in turn influence future usage of your innovation. All right. That the paper has covered this in more details, but you can see how you can use conceptual frameworks to you know, investigate whether how well your product or idea will do before it is being marketed. This is another case study, and I thought this was relevant because this involves the Malaysian manufacturing small medium enterprises. All right, so this is also a recent study. And the purpose of this paper was to examine the attributes of innovation adoption and its effects on the performance of Malaysian manufacturing SMEs. And this was quite interesting, but I'll not go through it in detail because you've already got an idea of the Uber mobile app. All right, so with this, you would have different sets of questions, and it's always like that. You have all this literature available to you, and what you can do is to modify and adapt those questions and check their applicability to your innovation. Okay, so all your innovations will have different relative advantages, and what you need to do is look at what others have found and try and tailor those questions to your innovation. All right, so this is a sort of relative advantages that was statements that was used in this study, and I'm not going to go through it because you can have that paper to read as well. There's questions on compatibility. All right, so you can see the questions are quite different when you're looking at you know, an objective like this with the SMEs. Complexity and triability. Okay, so these are questions that was asked in the questionnaire that was that's and the last one is observability. So you can see all those different components, that 4 components that were identified by Rogers were implemented in this research, and these are the questions. Okay, so what they did was they carried out a quantitative data study, and they used 360 randomly selected manufacturing SMEs in Malaysia, and they analyzed the results, and instead of using partial least squares path modeling, they used partial least squares structural equation modeling, which is SEM. Same thing, they had the conceptual framework, they had hypothesis, and what they were doing is trying to see if there is a correlation, okay, in terms of the different components. And this is the sort of results that they got. And you can see in terms of relative advantage, compatibility, if you look at the p-values, they are all significant. Yeah. And you can see trialability, observability, they are all significant positive effects on innovation persuasion among the Malaysian manufacturing SMEs. So this is the second case study. So what I've done so far is talked about innovation, all right, which is the first component of the first element of the diffusion of an innovation theory. And in innovation, I talked about the different factors that would influence the adoption of that innovation. Okay, so I hope that's clear to you now. What I'll go on next is talk about channels of communication. Because once you have your innovation, what do you need to do? You have to communicate this to your potential customers. And so this is what I will cover now. The second component or second element of the diffusion of innovation. So that's what diffusion comes in this model. When you hear the word, when you see the word diffusion, is the diffusion of that idea, and this will occur by communication. Okay, so in the communication process, you must have an innovation. So of course, that idea of innovation must be there, and that you must have either an individual, okay, must involve a person. Rogers also mentioned other unit of adoption. Okay, so but I'm just going to talk in terms of people here, because a lot of my examples are related to people. Another individual. And the fourth one is the communication channel connecting an individual and another individual. All right. So mass media channels is another way of communicating your diffusion, all right, of innovation. So if you want people to know about your innovation, the most rapid method is mass media. Okay, radio, television, newspapers. Yeah, this is what people listen to when they're driving, and so you're able to reach more people this way. Interpersonal channels. Yeah, you work in a social system. You're at work, you're at home, so you have that interpersonal channels available to you. Or you might go to the gym. Okay, that's another channel. Or you're a member of a particular society, that's another channel. And this channel links two or more individuals who are similar in socio-economic status, education, or other ways. So that's available to you. Interactive communication, and this is widely used because we all use internet. And what happens when your Wi-Fi is not working? We all start, jumbling around, and we just find it so difficult because everything is on internet. In fact, this talk would not be possible if not for internet. So that's a very good method of diffusion of certain innovations. And especially in these times, I think it would be the most effective means of communication of your idea to your customers. On the topic of communication channels, I just like to let you know that most individuals do not evaluate an innovation based on scientific studies. Who carries out the scientific studies? We do. Okay, we are academics, we carry out the studies. But if you think about the masses of people out there, this is not relevant to them. It's only important to the very first individuals who adopt. These are the early adopters. Okay, most of us depend on subjective evaluation of an innovation. So, for example, if someone's used that app, all right, so they convey they have an idea of what other people are using, what other people feel once they've adopted the innovation. So the heart of the diffusion process consists of the modeling and imitation of potential adopters of their network partners. So the people around them who have previously adopted the innovation. So that's it for channels of communication. The third element of the diffusion of innovation theory is that the rate, the time. Okay, time is important because sometimes your products can be adopted really quick, and other times the products are adopted very slowly or not adopted at all. All right, so time is a very important element in the diffusion of innovation theory, and I'll talk about it now. So if you see here, it's the rate at which innovation is diffused on the relative speed with which it is adopted by members of the social system. Time. So The time dimension is involved in diffusion in the innovation decision process by which an individual passes from first knowledge of an innovation through its adoption or its rejection. All right, so that decision is there, and that involves time. The innovativeness of an individual or other unit of adoption, and innovation's rate of adoption. So this is measured by the number of members in the system who adopt the innovation in a given time. So time is critical in the division of your. Does this involve knowledge? Okay, try and think back about that Uber mobile app case study just now. Yeah, knowledge is very important because it provides you an understanding of the innovation's existence. It gives you an understanding of how the Uber app performs and functions. Okay, persuasion is another important thing, because that takes time. You can get, you have friends and you like the app, Uber mobile app, for example, and so you share this with others. So and you can persuade them to adopt it. Decision. Okay, so when you're engaged with that product, you will decide whether you want to adopt or reject the innovation. Implementation. This takes place when the individual puts an innovation into use. So they've adopted the Uber mobile app innovation, and so at times what happens is that you use it, and then after that there's also the confirmation stage, whereby the individual seeks reinforcement of an innovation decision. Okay, there may be other mobile apps around, and maybe it's not Uber, they might go for Grab, and there are a lot of other mobile apps like Gojek, and so you might move. Okay, so the idea is there, but you may have the other options as well you can consider. And I'm just going to go through the adopter categories. And just remember, innovativeness is the degree to which an individual or other unit of adoption is relatively earlier in adopting new ideas than the other members of a system. So there are different adopter categories. The first one is the innovators. This is followed by the early adopters, the early majority, late majority, and finally laggards. So this is a speed at which an innovation is adopted by members of a social system. And if I showed you earlier, maybe it was the second slide, where you can see that most innovations would have a S-shaped rate of adoption. So ideas that diffuse rapidly will have a quite steep S-curve. And if the innovation have a slower rate of adoption, the S-curve is more gradual in terms of the slope. So what you see here is the S-shaped slope, all right, in brown, okay, or beige, okay, it's beige brown. And you can see the innovators, they typically comprise 2.5% of the population. All right. And then you have your early adopters, that's 13.5% of the population. The early majority is 34% of the population. And the late majority accounts for another 34% of the population. And the laggards, okay, these are the late adopters. They comprise 16% of the population. And you can see this is quite interesting. This shows you the technology adoption by households in the United States. And you can see purple is the radio, red is the color TV. And you can see the S model, the S curve. Can you see that? Okay, it's quite clear for the green here, which is the microwave. And what you can see here, I'm just going to bring up another example which people might find interesting is Bitcoin. All right. So where's Bitcoin in the S curve? And if you see, ebook readers, tablets, all right, it doesn't quite, you don't quite see the S curve just yet. All right. But look at Bitcoin. Yeah. Okay. I don't know whether you all invested in Bitcoin, but it's not good news now because it's just tumbling down at a rapid rate. And where does Bitcoin sit in this S curve? Okay, so Bitcoin is here. So there's only 0.7% Bitcoin adoption, and its adoption by specific categories of customers. And you can see people at the very start of the S curve, those are your innovators. So the people who adopt Bitcoin, um, 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 the Bitcoin, innovation, dangerous and risky adventures. They're taking high risk when they buy Bitcoin, and they are able to tolerate high risk and uncertainty. So these are your early adopters, your innovators. Sorry, early adopters is the second class of people, and so they are respected figures in the established social system. So they are not the adventurous person that you may be. They are actually people in the system that hold high positions. The people in this case, the examples are Eric Paul and Preston Pish from the investorpodcast.com. All right, so they are the early adopters in this. And so when I say where does Bitcoin sit in the S-shaped curve, it's between the innovators and the early adopters. The majority of us have not, um, taken that risk because we know it's risky. So the final element of diffusion of innovation theory is the social system. And this involves individuals, all right, like you, me, your friends, okay, organizations, okay, it could be universities, the companies, or even agencies that share a common culture and are potential adopters of the innovation. So this is the last one. So what is the social system? It's a set of interrelated units that are engaged in joint problem solving to accomplish a common goal. So this all involves people, your friends, your people you work with, and so there are so many different innovations as optional innovations um, uh, that that you can get that's made by individuals, collective innovation that's decision made by the consensus among the members of a social system, authority innovation decisions. And so these are people who are holding the management positions in your institutions or your companies. So these are the people who possess power, status, or technical expertise. So that's authority information. Okay. And there's also contingent innovation. All right, so you have choices made by a combination of two or more of these three types of innovation decisions. If you want to get more information about this, there's a whole chapter on it in Roger's book, but I thought I just give you that idea of what you should be looking for if this is of further interest to you. So all in all, you can see how it all comes together here. The innovation, all right, which I talked about earlier, the variables that determine the rate of adoption of an innovation. So there's the perceived attributes of innovation, which I talked about. I had the example on Uber mobile app, and that example of the case study on Malaysian SMEs, and looking at all these different factors that would influence the adoption of that innovation. Then there's that innovation decision I've just talked about, optional collective authority, communication channels. I hope you know that plays a big role, because you have to communicate those ideas of your innovations, all right, through the right channels in order for it to be adopted. Nature of your social system. I've not covered the efforts of change agents. Okay, so I think if you want to read about it more, please read the book by Rogers. And all this will influence your rate of adoption of the innovation. All right. I just like to finish off with this interesting paper by by people in a Nordic country. I think it's I can't remember. I think it's maybe Denmark, or sort of Scandinavian country, and they're looking at moving consumers. So I showed you just now the early the innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and the laggards. So they are looking at moving consumers along the innovation adoption curve, and they've used a new approach to accelerate the shift towards a more sustainable diet. So there's a lot of interest in sustainability, and more people in the Western or developed countries wanting to contribute to sustainability by changing their diets. So instead of using meat proteins, they are opting for plant proteins. And this is a very interesting paper. I thought I really enjoyed reading this, and I'll probably share it with you in a while. So what they did first was to create an avatar, okay, and they did this, and okay, so it's a Norwegian project, and this is how they created a customer avatar to determine the target market to determine the target market of your product. So the authors did a series of studies. They collected, evaluated, and combined data from focus groups, consumer observations, and what they did is to create a customer avatar. And this customer avatar that they created, they develop personas or avatars based on demographics, personal values, attitudes towards sustainability, health, and meat consumption. Okay, so these are the avatars they had. Andrea, so they called this particular avatar here Andrea. So this is the innovator, the innovative urban hipster. Ramya, the multicultural flavor diversifier, family serum, Henrietta, Beyond, and so on. So these are the different personas which are representative of the Norwegian consumers. And how do they sit? Okay, they didn't just magically come up with this and just put them in there, okay, in this adoption curve. It involved a lot of research and a lot of experiments, questionnaires that they carried out. So what I'm giving you is just a snapshot. All right. Uh, so it didn't magically become like this, but you can see it's quite interesting where the innovators are here. These are people who are adventurous, yeah. They like the idea of changing their diets radically from meat to plant. And then there's the next group, flexitarians. These are people who choose to eat plant proteins or plant products, or being a vegetarian maybe 3 times a week rather than eating meat 7 days a week. So that's what we mean by flexitarians. There's some groups who are open to vegetarian food, and these are your early adopters. You can see with the early majority, that's approximately 34% of the population. Those are the people who consume processed foods. And the late majorities are comprised of people who are very conservative. They don't, like the idea of eating meat, of not eating meat. And of course, the laggards are the carnivores. So this is how they position the consumer segments and personas along the innovation adoption curve. So possible interventions, that's really good. Okay, they really liked it, and that's great, and they think it's a good thing, yeah, that they can go for. So what did they do? They, for each group that they had on that curve, they tried to suggest some possible interventions to accelerate adoption. So this is quite unique of this study, and I've not seen a study like this. I thought this far more interesting, because if you can identify the interventions, then you're able to accelerate the adoption of, in this case, the idea of eating plant proteins. Okay, so you can see here, open to vegetarian foods. This is your early adopter, and you can see the demographics, consumption, purchase factor. But what is of interest is you can see the innovation attribute. I've covered that, and you've seen that in the 2 case studies. So this study is even more extensive in the sense that they not only rated in terms of these innovation attributes, they also identify interventions to accelerate adoption. For example, the relative advantage, yeah, information and products that improve social status and influence health and well-being benefits. Yeah, so those are the relative advantages for this group of early adopters. It will change with different groups. All right. And compatibility, supporting desire to change with new and exciting dishes or recipes, and so on. But it's quite interesting because they've identified the interventions as well. And this is the early majority. And remember when I showed you on that innovation curve, these are your early majority, the people who will, you know, that's about 34% of your population. And these are their demographics. And these are, again, uh, what are the things that will get them to adopt the plant proteins better, okay, easier. So these are the potential uh, things that they can do to attract this early majority consumers. And this is the late majority, the omnivores, and these are the interventions. All right, I suggest you read the paper. Yeah, I won't have the time to go through it, but I just want to share it with you so that when you have time, because you have the basics of diffusion of innovation, when you read these papers, you'll understand it better. And finally, the laggards, which are the carnivores. So these are the last people who will adopt a meal, a diet where you have plant proteins, because these are strong believers of meat eating. Yeah, so they love meat. They will never try vegetarian things. So they will be last one in that curve to adopt a plant-based diet. All right, that's all I have to share with you today, and I thank you all for your attention. But before I go, I would like to just share with you, just show you the papers, okay? So you know um, what what you can do. So because we are all in academia, and it's always good. Okay, let me see, how do I share this? Share. Okay. What you will see now is the PDF. Okay, and you can see this is the book by Rogers. Okay, it's a it's a really it's a book with many chapters on the different elements. All right, so that's something you can look for. You can see a lot of examples, and I really enjoyed reading it. But you can read it more in your time, and you can get it from your library. This is the paper about the diffusion of innovation among the Malaysian manufacturing SMEs. That example that I showed you just now. And this is an interesting one on the Uber mobile app. Yeah. And this was published online in 2018, although it said 2021, but it was available online in 2018, and it's quite interesting that this group was looking at consumer adoption of the app using the diffusion of innovation model and the technology acceptance model as well. Sustainability, this is that paper by the Norwegians, and they carried this study, and you can see it's huge study. And as academics, if you're interested to get into this, this is how they got avatars and all that. So these are all actually explained in detail in the materials and methods. You can see just the method itself is so it's so long. It's so long compared to a normal journal. And I thought I'll share with you one more. I thought this was really interesting, and this is in Trends in Food Science and Technology. Why we still don't eat insects. All right, and they use the diffusion of innovations framework to explain. Like eating insects is not a new idea. It's been there for centuries. Yeah, a lot of countries in Asia or Africa have been eating insects, but why do we not still eat insects? All right, so you can use the diffusion of innovation framework to look at this. And so this is interesting reading as well, I would say. And I just cannot share everything with you, but by sharing with you the principles, the elements of the diffusion of innovation theory, and sharing with you the factors that influences the adoption of your innovation, I hope that you will be able to appreciate papers like this, and maybe use use a model like this before you launch a product, or see whether your idea is going to work. um, so it's really a good way of assessing your innovations. And that's all from me, and I leave it to Aida now, Dr. Aida, to um, come up with questions, or um, yeah, or we can have a discussion on this.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Nazimah. Such a great sharing, I guess. I really enjoy your session. It's something that we can adapt to our research, because diffusion of innovation is something very huge. It can cover many fields, right? Not only in
Mm,
food science, but
yeah.
I guess in all, because you featured to us the example from Uber, and then there's also examples for, yeah, inside,
Yeah.
the entomophagy, and also the framework from SME manufacturing. That's
Mm,
something very exciting. So we have a comment here from actually Dr. Farid Ismail from UPM. He says here, diffusion of innovation is indeed the mother of all innovation diffusion research, rooted back by Rogers. I'm in the same line of research, especially on the e-business and internet marketing and
Uh,
innovation management. Wow, we have a great people joining us today, Prof.
yeah,
So
yeah, we can learn from him.
yeah, of
Wow,
course. But
yeah.
unfortunately, I have another session now, so allow me to excuse myself. But he dropped his contact number here, so maybe we can further contact him for collaboration, inshallah. Okay. So we also open for question and answer if there is any for Prof. Nazimah. Yeah, you can just jot down your question in the chat box. Yeah. I have one question here, Prof. Looking at how great is theory, the innovation diffusion of innovation theory, how can you think that a student, maybe food science in our context, food science student, can adapt this new knowledge in their maybe process of product development?
Oh,
What is
yeah.
your opinion on that?
I think with the diffusion of innovation theory, it's not specific enough to be a particular, say you're making a vegetarian meat patty, okay, or vegetarian patty, uh, because it's too specific. This model, you can apply it to more ideas. And so what I've been looking is, it could be an app, yeah, but not so much products you make for the industries, but it could be a class of products that you're creating. Yeah, so that example with plant protein is one. Maybe so there's a lot of potential in food, but also maybe apps that you can use to see which is a healthy food. I think people are interested in that. They have an app now, and you look at, you can take photos of the food, and then it'll come up with nutritional information. Sometimes that could be something that when developing something that consumers would like to use. Yeah, something like Uber. Food is big. You go to the supermarket, and I've noticed there's so many things. There are e-numbers, there are nutritional information. So maybe you could get all that in an app, or there are already apps for that, to show you to make healthy food choices. That could be one. A lot of interest in diets like keto diets. Yeah, some people are very health conscious now, so they're not eating a lot of carbs, going towards keto diets, and that in terms of health aspects, you could look at that as well. Uh, but yeah, there are a lot of users. I think we just need to sit down and do a bit of brainstorming, yeah, with Dr. Aida and the people in food science, and come up with ideas on how we could use this model. And so we're not looking at a small picture, yeah, at specific products. We're looking at, you know, um, something a bit bigger, yeah, and that's why we just need to collaborate and come up with ideas more, in order to adopt model like this.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I have one more question here. Actually, I got a few questions PM to me privately, so maybe
Okay.
I'm shy to write down the question. All
No
right.
worry.
So, okay, how to ensure that the food we develop is actually in sync with the current food trend, or maybe
Yeah,
considering the DOI application?
yeah. So you yeah, you do need to do a lot of reading. When I thought about this idea, I say, hey, it's quite good if we did this on plant proteins. But I looked online, and then there it was already done. But remember, that was only done on the Norwegians, correct? So
Yes.
how about the Malaysians? Yeah.
Mm.
How about people in Asia? They would have a different uh, when you look at the consumers, and they had avatars, that's only for the Norwegian consumers. we could develop something along the lines of, what people think about innovations like on plant proteins in Asia. If you do a study like this and you see, oh, there's not much interest really, people view it as being a complex, um, and
Yes.
people don't want to change. People are, I'm happy being a carnivore, so you're not going to get uptake of plant proteins. So why develop plant proteins in a country, in countries like Asia? It's more for countries in developing countries that things like this are taking off. In my experience, even New Zealanders don't like plant proteins because it's an agriculture country, and they they like their meat, and they're not gonna move away
Shift their
from that.
diet.
Yeah, no. So what's the use coming up with plant protein products in a country like New Zealand where there's not going to be much uptake? But really, if you look at um, Scandinavian countries, you have studies like that. You know what products you can make, but again, you could develop something for export. But it's always useful to. It's not so easy to develop products for export. You have to start small first, right? Nationally, then go internationally. So studies like this, although done in other countries, can be done in Asia. And I must say, in Asian countries, that's where we need to do more studies. Yeah, we just don't know. We just develop things and we don't know whether people want it, and then there's a bit of a mismatch because you need to have this understanding of your consumers before you develop products. So a survey is quite good way, I would say, and it's a bonus if you can get a publication. And people, I tell you, editors are looking for publications from this part of the world.
So read a lot, and we can start first with replicating other people's work, but in our region, right, Prof?
Correct. Yeah. You can see most of this work is not done here. Yeah.
Correct.
But
Good
food
to
is
know.
important because it's so different here. The supermarkets, the things you sell.
Malaysia is
Oh,
the heaven, food
I
heaven.
have food haven. Yeah. I don't think you're going to go to the supermarket and pick up that plant protein product that will cost you what, 50 ringgit. You can use that 50
That that
ringgit and eat it.
that may describe the of
Ah,
increase in
no.
obesity in Malaysia.
Oh, yeah. That's another
All
diffusion
right.
of innovation model.
Alright. Thank you so much, Prof. And I would also thanks our participants. We have participants from all over IPT and IPTS in Malaysia. Not forgetting also from Indonesia, and and also from all branches, a few branches of UITM. So thank you so much for participating in this very interesting topic. And before we end our session, we would like to have a photo session with all of you. So I would very appreciate if all of us can switch on our video, right, for photo session. Okay, hopefully all of us can turn on the video. All pretty, beautiful face, handsome faces. Okay, so maybe 10 CPI office can snap a picture for today, but not everyone are willing to open up to switch on their video. Okay,
Everybody ready?
all right.
1, 2.